Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty fundamental, I think, for improving our lives. It's all about how habits actually form, and maybe more importantly, how we can take some control over them.
You take the reins a bit.
Exactly. So, we've really dug into James Clear's Atomic Habits here. Our goal wasn't just to read it, but to pull out the really useful bits.
The practical stuff.
Right, the strategies you can, hopefully start using pretty much straight away. Building those good habits we all want, maybe finally ditching some bad ones.
And without it feeling like this massive, overwhelming project, right?
Hopefully not.
Because Clear's book, it's packed with stuff. He draws on examples from, well, everywhere. Olympic athletes, sure, but also just regular people trying to get slightly more organized.
Yeah, it's very relatable.
So our mission today is really just to make these big ideas feel clear, simple, and actionable, something you can actually do.
Okay, let's get into it then. One of the first things that really stuck with me is this concept Clear talks about called the plateau of latent potential.
Ah, yes. That one resonates with a lot of people.
It really does. It's that feeling,
Right.
You're putting in the effort, you're consistent, you're doing the things, but you're just not seeing any results. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, incredibly familiar. It's probably one of the main reasons people give up on new habits.
I bet.
But the key thing Clear points out is that progress, well, it's almost never a straight line up. It's usually hidden for a while.
Hidden.
Yeah, he uses that great analogy of heating an ice cube. Imagine it starts at, say, 25 degrees.
Okay.
You add heat, it gets to 28, then 31. You're doing the work, right? You're putting energy in.
Mm-hmm.
But the ice cube, still solid. It looks like nothing's happening.
Right, because it hasn't hit melting point.
Exactly. But crucially, that energy you added wasn't wasted. It was stored. It was building up potential. The change, the melting, only happens when you cross that threshold 32 degrees.
Ah, okay, so that frustration we feel, it might actually mean we're close.
It could very well mean that. You're storing up that potential energy. You're building momentum. The breakthrough often comes after that period of invisible progress. It's about trusting the process, even when the results aren't obvious yet.
That's actually quite encouraging. And he also mentions how when that breakthrough finally does happen, it often looks like an overnight success to others.
Right. People see the jump, the visible change, but they totally miss all the consistent, maybe even boring work that came before it.
The hours on the plateau.
Exactly. It really hammers home why sticking with it matters, even when you aren't getting that immediate feedback, that instant reward.
Yeah, it connects to patience, doesn't it? And just recognizing that those little things you do day in, day out, they are adding up.
They really are. It's like compound interest for self-improvement, as he calls it. The biggest gains often come later.
Okay, now another idea that really hit home for me was this connection between our identity and our habits.
Well, this is a big one. It shifts the focus, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just about the actions, the things we do, but about who we believe we are.
Right. And Clear's argument here is pretty compelling. If a behavior doesn't align with your underlying sense of self, your identity, it's going to be really hard to sustain it long term.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like maybe you consciously want to save more money, you set a budget, track expenses.
You're trying.
You're trying. But if, deep down, your identity is still that of a consumer, someone who gets satisfaction from buying things, who feels they deserve treats, well, that identity will keep pulling you back towards spending. It creates internal friction.
Okay, yeah. Or like wanting to be healthier, you stock the fridge with veggies. But if you still see yourself as someone who needs like a pint of ice cream after a tough day because that's just who I am,
Yeah.
that healthy eating habit is going to be a constant battle.
Exactly. There's that internal conflict. But here's the really interesting part.
Yeah.
Our habits don't just reflect our identity.
Yeah.
They actually help shape it.
How?
Well, think of every action you take as a little piece of evidence. It's like casting a vote for the type of person you want to become.
A vote. I like that.
Yeah. So every time you choose to write, even just one page, you're casting a vote. I am a writer.
Okay.
Every time you practice an instrument, even for 5 minutes, that's a vote. I am a musician. That workout you squeezed in, vote. I am an athletic person.
Even small things, like encouraging a colleague.
Absolutely. That's a vote. I am a supportive leader. These small acts build up evidence for your desired identity.
And you don't need to be perfect, right?
Not at all. That's the beauty of it. Like any election, you don't need 100% of the votes. You just need to win the majority. Aim for more votes for the identity you want than against it.
So how do we use this? What's the process?
Clear lays out a pretty straightforward two-step process for these identity-based habits.
Okay.
Step 1. Decide the type of person you want to be. What are your principles? What do you stand for? Who do you aspire to become? Get clear on that first.
Right. Define the target identity.
Exactly. Step 2. Prove it to yourself with small wins. Use those tiny habits as evidence. Each small action reinforces the belief, yes, I am this kind of person. You're building self-belief incrementally.
And this reinforces the idea that identity isn't fixed, is it?
Not at all. We have agency. We can choose which identity to reinforce through our daily choices, our habits. The habits we cultivate today are actively shaping who we become tomorrow.
So building habits isn't just about, say, losing 10 pounds or finishing a project.
It's much deeper than that. It's fundamentally about becoming someone, aligning who you are with who you want to be. That's the real power behind it.
Okay, that's a really powerful frame. Now let's maybe zoom in a bit. Let's talk about the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of habits themselves. Clear breaks down every habit into this core four-stage pattern.
That's right. A simple loop that runs constantly in our brains, often unconsciously, goes cue, craving, response, reward.
Okay, let's take those one by one. First, the cue. What's that?
The cue is the trigger. It's the bit of information that predicts a reward is coming. Our brains are constantly scanning the environment for these cues.
Like ancestrally, seeing berries meant food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cues originally pointed to primary rewards: food, water, safety, sex. Nowadays, though, many cues predict secondary rewards we've learned to value.
Like money, or praise, or just feeling good.
Precisely. Money, status, approval, stress relief, satisfaction. Our phones buzzing, the smell of coffee, walking into a certain room. These can all be cues.
Okay, so the cue kicks things off. It signals a potential reward. Then comes the craving. What's happening there?
The craving is the motivation. It's the desire to change your internal state. And here's a key distinction. You don't usually crave the habit itself.
Right.
You crave the feeling or the outcome the habit provides.
Okay, so I don't crave smoking a cigarette. I crave the stress relief it provides.
Exactly. You don't crave turning on the TV. You crave the relaxation or distraction. The craving is about the anticipated change in state.
Got it. Makes sense. Stage 3 is the response. That's the actual habit.
Yep. The response is the habit you actually perform, whether it's a physical action like lacing up your running shoes or even just a thought like worrying about something. It's the behavior triggered by the cue and craving.
And finally, number 4, the reward, the payoff.
The reward is the end goal. It does two crucial things. One, it satisfies the craving, at least temporarily. Two, and this is vital for learning, it teaches your brain which actions are worth remembering and repeating. It closes the loop.
It reinforces the connection between the cue, the craving, and the response.
Exactly. That's how the habit gets wired in.
And Clear really stresses that if any one of these 4 stages is weak or missing, the habit just won't stick, right?
Absolutely. No cue, the habit never starts. No craving, no motivation to act. Response too difficult, you won't do it consistently. Reward unsatisfying, your brain won't bother remembering it for next time. All 4 need to work together.
Okay, that framework is super helpful. Now, before we can even start applying those laws to change things, we need to know what we're dealing with, which brings us to awareness.
Yes. The whole process of behavior change has to start with awareness. You need to know what your current habits actually are.
Because so many are automatic, right? We don't even notice them.
Precisely. They run on autopilot. Like, think about locking your front door. Do you consciously think through every step each time? Probably not. It's just automatic.
Yeah, or driving a familiar route.
Exactly. Our brains were prediction machines. They learn patterns, identify cues, and automate responses to free up our conscious attention for new things. It's efficient, but it means we're often blind to our own routines.
So how do we, shine a light on these unconscious habits?
Clear suggests a couple of practical ways. One is surprisingly simple. It's called pointing and calling.
Pointing and calling.
Well,
Sounds a bit odd.
It does. But it's used in really high-stakes fields like Japanese railways or surgery to reduce errors. You literally point at something and say what you're doing or observing out loud.
So like picking up phone or opening refrigerator.
Exactly. It forces that non-conscious action into your conscious awareness.
Yeah.
It sounds silly, but it works because it interrupts the automaticity.
Okay. I can see how that might make you notice things. What else?
Another great exercise is the habit scorecard.
Okay.
This is just making a list of your daily habits as you go through your day. From waking up, checking your phone, making coffee, commuting. Just List them out.
And then maybe judge them like good, bad, neutral.
Yeah, you can add a little plus, minus, or equal sign next to each one based on whether it serves your long-term goals.
Right.
But the main goal initially is just awareness. Seeing it written down can be really eye-opening. Wow, I check my email that often.
Yeah, I can imagine just seeing the patterns laid out.
Right. So once you have that awareness, once you can see your habits, then you can start applying the 4 laws to consciously shape them.
Yeah.
And the first law is make it obvious.
Okay, law 1, make it obvious. How do we make the good habits we want more visible, more front and center?
Well, one really powerful technique here is using what psychologists call implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions. Okay, what are those?
It comes from research, actually, a study in Great Britain on exercise habits. They found something really interesting.
Yeah.
They had different groups. One group just tracked their exercise, another read about the benefits, but a third group was asked to make a specific plan.
A specific plan.
Yeah, they had to state exactly when and where they intended to exercise. Fill in the blanks. During the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day at time and place.
Ah, okay, very, very concrete.
Very concrete. And the results were striking. In the first 2 groups, only about 38% exercised at least once a week. But in the group that made the specific plan, 91%.
Wow, that's a huge difference just from writing it down.
Just from making that specific intention. It turns a vague goal like, I want to exercise more, into a concrete plan your brain can actually latch onto. It answers the when and where.
So being specific about time and location is key.
Massively key. It preloads the decision.
Okay, that's practical. What else falls under make it obvious?
Another great strategy is habit stacking.
Habit stacking. I like the sound of that.
It's simple, but effective. You link a new habit you want to form directly to an existing habit you already do without thinking.
How does that work?
The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Let's say you want to practice gratitude more. Your current habit might be drinking your morning coffee. So your habit stack could be, after I pour my morning coffee, I will think of one thing I'm grateful for.
Ah, okay. You're piggybacking the new habit onto an established routine.
Exactly. Or, after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. Or, after I brush my teeth at night, I will floss one tooth. Start small.
That seems much less daunting than trying to create a new routine from scratch.
Way less daunting.
Yeah.
You leverage the momentum you already have, and you can chain them together eventually too.
Okay, implementation intentions, habit stacking. What about our surroundings, our environment?
A huge key factor. We often think habits are all about motivation and willpower, but the environment plays an enormous role in making cues obvious or invisible.
How so?
We tend to choose the path of least resistance, the most obvious option. Think about product placement in stores. The things at eye level, they sell better. It's not rocket science, it's just obviousness.
Right, what's easy to see and grab?
And our vision is incredibly dominant, right? A huge chunk of our brain power goes to processing what we see. So visual cues are incredibly powerful triggers for behavior.
So if we want to make a good habit obvious,
Design your environment to prime you for it. Want to read more? Leave a book on your pillow or your coffee table. Want to eat healthier? Put fruit out on the counter. Hide the junk food in the back of the pantry. Make the cues for good habits visible and the cues for bad habits invisible.
it's about engineering your space.
Totally. And sometimes changing your environment completely can be the easiest way to change a habit.
How do you mean? Like moving house?
Doesn't have to be that drastic. But even just changing where you perform a certain activity can help. If you always snack mindlessly while watching TV on the couch, try reading there instead for a while. Break the association. New spaces make it easier to form new habits because you're not fighting old triggers.
That makes sense. Escaping the old cues.
A clear use is the powerful example of heroin addiction among U.S. soldiers during the Vietnam War.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
Addiction rates were incredibly high over there.
Oh.
But the surprising thing, when the soldiers came home, the vast majority just stopped, almost overnight.
Why?
Because the environment changed radically. All the cues associated with drug use, the stress, the peer group, the location, were gone. It shows just how context-dependent even strong habits can be.
So it suggests that people with seemingly amazing self-control, maybe they're just better at designing their environments.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
They often structure their lives to avoid needing heroic willpower all the time. They make the good choices, the easy, obvious choices, by controlling their surroundings. Discipline the environment, not just yourself.
Okay, make it obvious. Got it. Let's move to law 2. Make it attractive.
Right. because the more appealing an opportunity seems, the more likely we are to actually do it.
Right. Stands to reason. So how do we make good habits more attractive?
A lot of this comes down to dopamine, that neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward.
Hmm.
What's really interesting is that dopamine isn't just released when we get a reward. It actually spikes in anticipation of a reward. That anticipation is what drives motivation.
Ah, so it's the wanting, not just the having.
Exactly. That's why things like scrolling social media can be so addictive. It's the anticipation of the next interesting post, the next notification. That little dopamine hit keeps you hooked. He even mentions a study with mice, where they artificially boosted dopamine. And the mice basically became compulsion machines, losing interest in everything else except triggering that dopamine release. It highlights how powerful anticipation is.
Okay, so dopamine and anticipation are key. How do we use that for good habits?
One really clever strategy is called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. Tell me more.
It's about pairing something you want to do with something you need to do,
Mhm.
linking an instantly gratifying activity with a habit that pays off later.
Okay, like how?
Well, say you love listening to podcasts,
Ahem.
but you need to exercise more. You could bundle them. I only get to listen to my favorite podcasts while I'm working out.
Ah, so the want podcast makes the need exercise more attractive.
Exactly. Or
Mm.
after I do 10 push-ups, need, I get to check Instagram, want. Or while I'm catching up on reality TV, want, I will fold the laundry, you
Mm.
need. You use the thing you enjoy to pull you through the thing you're building a habit for.
That's smart. Linking the instant reward to the delayed return habit.
Precisely. Another huge factor in attractiveness is our social environment. We are deeply influenced by the people around us.
Right, we want to fit in, be accepted.
Absolutely. Clear points out we tend to imitate three groups in particular: the close, the many, and the powerful.
Okay, the close, like friends and family.
Yeah. Our inner circle. He shares that story about astronaut Mike Massimino, how a surprising number of people from his specific MIT class also became astronauts. The shared environment, the norms.
Hmm.
It made it seem more attainable, more attractive.
Your peers shape your expectations.
Hugely. There's even that study suggesting your best friend's IQ can influence yours over time. We soak up habits and standards from those closest to us.
Okay, so the close, then the many. Conformity.
Exactly. The power of the group. Think of the classic Ash conformity experiments.
Where people denied what they clearly saw just to go along with the group.
Right. We have a deep-seated desire to belong. The normal behavior of the tribe often feels more attractive than being an outlier, even if the tribe's behavior isn't objectively good for us. Getting approval, respect, praise, those are powerful rewards that make conforming attractive.
And the powerful.
We tend to imitate those with status, success, or authority. We see behaviors that lead to respect and admiration, and we're drawn to copy them, hoping for similar outcomes.
So surrounding ourselves with people who have the habits we want can make those habits more attractive to us.
Definitely. Joining a group where the desired behavior is the norm can be incredibly effective.
But what if a habit just doesn't feel attractive? Like eating broccoli still isn't as appealing as pizza, you know?
Fair point. This is where reframing comes in, shifting your mindset.
Oh, wow.
One way is to change the language you use. Instead of I have to go for a run, I get to build my endurance. Instead of I have to save money, think I get to build future freedom.
Shifting from obligation to opportunity.
Exactly. Focus on the benefits, not the drawbacks. Reframe exercise not as a chore, but as developing skills, improving health. Reframe saving not as deprivation, but as empowerment. Associate the habit with positive outcomes in your mind.
Actively find the good in it.
Yes. And remember those cues we talked about. They trigger cravings. So making the cues for good habits more attractive and the cues for bad habits less so also plays a role here.
Okay, make it attractive. Got it. Law 3, make it easy.
This one seems obvious, but it's critical. We are fundamentally wired to conserve energy.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. And Clear stresses that mastering a habit is less about perfection and more about repetition, just showing up, getting your reps in.
Like building muscle.
Precisely. He mentions Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you repeat an action, you strengthen the neural circuits for that habit. It becomes more automatic, easier.
And it's the frequency that matters most, right? Not just how long you've been trying.
Absolutely. Doing something small every day is far more effective for wiring a habit than doing something huge once a week. Frequency builds fluency.
So how do we make those reps easier to get in? How do we reduce the friction?
Well, we often see habits as obstacles to our goals, right? Dieting is an obstacle to being fit. Studying is an obstacle to getting good grades. The easier we make the obstacle, the more likely we are to overcome it.
Reduce the effort required.
Exactly. Environment design comes back here again.
How so?
We talked about making cues obvious. Now think about making the action easier. Choosing a gym that's on your commute makes going easier. Setting out your workout clothes the night before makes starting easier.
Prime the environment for the action itself.
Yes. Think about those Japanese factories using lean principles. They redesigned workspaces to remove every unnecessary step, putting tools exactly where needed. They made efficiency easy.
And we can do that for ourselves. Make healthy food easier to grab than junk food. Make the book easier to pick up than the remote.
Right. And conversely, increase friction for bad habits. Want to watch less TV? Unplug it after use, take the batteries out of the remote. Want to use your phone less? Leave it in another room. Make the unwanted behavior harder.
Add steps. Add difficulty.
Clear also talks about decisive moments, those little choices early on that dictate what happens next.
Like putting on running shoes.
Exactly. That small action often leads directly to the run. The decisive moment isn't the run itself, it's the choice that starts the cascade. Mastering the decisive moment makes the whole habit easier.
Okay, and that leads nicely into the 2-minute rule, doesn't it?
It does. This is such a practical gem. The idea is scale down any new habit so that the very beginning of it takes less than 2 minutes.
Less than 2 minutes.
Yep. Read before bed becomes read one page. Do yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Study for class becomes open my notes. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
So the goal isn't just doing 2 minutes.
No, the goal is to master the start of the habit, to make initiating the behavior incredibly easy. Once you've started, it's often much easier to continue. You overcome that initial inertia.
Build momentum from a tiny start. I like that.
It lowers the barrier to entry dramatically.
Okay, what else makes habits easy? He talks about automation, right?
Yes, leveraging technology and one-time decisions to lock in future behavior. This is super powerful.
Examples.
Setting up automatic bill payments, signing up for automatic prescription refills, scheduling automatic savings transfers, using meal delivery services, installing website blockers. These are one-time actions that automate good habits or block bad ones.
Making the default option the better option.
Exactly. Though, we have to be careful, technology can also automate bad habits. Autoplay videos, one-click ordering.
True. Double-edged sword.
And he mentions commitment devices here too. Actions you take now to make bad habits harder later.
Like Victor Hugo locking away his clothes.
Right? Or pre-portioned snack packs. Or asking a casino to ban you. Or Clear's own example of resetting his social media passwords weekly to create friction. You're making a choice in the present to constrain your future self.
Making bad habits difficult, good habits the path of least resistance, like that old cash register story.
Patterson's cash register.
Sure.
Exactly. It automated honesty by making stealing difficult. It's all about reducing friction for the good, increasing it for the bad.
Okay. Make it obvious, attractive, easy. Leads us to the final law. Make it satisfying.
And this one is crucial because it taps into how our brains are fundamentally wired.
How so?
Our brains evolved in what Clear calls an immediate return environment. Actions had quick consequences. Find food, eat now. See predator, run now. Immediate feedback was key to survival.
Okay, but now we live in a
delayed return environment. The rewards for many of our most important habits, exercising, saving, studying, working hard, are often delayed. Weeks, months, even years down the line.
Right. You don't get fit after one workout. You don't get rich after saving one paycheck.
Exactly. And this creates a conflict. Our brain, especially the older parts, still craves immediate gratification. Present you wants the donut now. Future you wants long-term health.
And present you often wins that battle.
Very often. Which leads to Clear's cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
So for a habit to stick, especially one with delayed benefits, we need to feel some kind of immediate success or satisfaction right after doing it.
Yes, even a small win. We need to give our brain that little hit of pleasure that says, hey, that was good. Do it again.
So how do we manufacture that immediate satisfaction?
One way is through reinforcement. Deliberately give yourself a small, immediate reward after completing the habit.
Like the temptation bundling, but afterwards?
Kind of. It could be tracking your progress, allowing yourself a guilt-free, enjoyable activity after a workout, savoring the feeling of accomplishment, transferring money into a fun savings account after sticking to your budget. Find small ways to feel good immediately after the action.
Okay. Making the completion itself feel rewarding,
hmm And visual tools like habit trackers are great for this.
like putting an X on the calendar.
Exactly. Seeing that chain grow provides immediate visual evidence of your progress. It feels satisfying, and it taps into the motivation of don't break the chain.
That can be powerful, but he warns about that too, right? The dark side of tracking.
Yeah, Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. You can get so focused on hitting the number, the steps, the streak, that you lose sight of the actual purpose behind the habit.
Optimize for the metric instead of the goal.
Right. So tracking is useful, but don't let it become the only thing that matters. And crucially, if you do miss a day,
Don't break the chain twice.
exactly, never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new, unwanted habit. Get back on track immediately. That's key for resilience.
Okay. What about external accountability?
Also very powerful for making things satisfying, or rather making failure immediately unsatisfying. Having an accountability partner, someone you report your progress to, adds a social cost to slipping up.
And habit contracts.
That takes it a step further. A formal agreement, often written, stating your commitment and the specific immediate penalty for failing.
Like that guy, Brian Harris, with the weight loss contract.
Yeah, financial penalties, public embarrassment. He made the cost of failure immediate, tangible, and painful. That can be a strong motivator to stick with the positive habit. It makes the consequences feel real now, not just in some distant future.
So it brings the pain forward, just like we need to bring the pleasure forward for good habits.
Exactly. It's about manipulating immediate consequences.
Okay, so those are the 4 laws. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. But what about just staying motivated, finding the right habits for you?
Yeah, this is important too. Clear acknowledges that personality and genetics play a role. Some habits will naturally feel easier or more enjoyable for you than for someone else.
So play to your strength.
Absolutely. There's an explore-exploit trade-off. You need to explore different things to find what clicks, what aligns with your natural talents and interests. Then exploit that, double down on the habits that feel right for you.
And luck plays a part too, finding the right opportunities.
Sure. But, as Scott Adams suggests, if you can't win by being the best, maybe you can win by being different. Combine your unique skills in a way that reduces competition. Find your niche.
Okay. But what about when even the right habit just gets boring? That happens, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even the most successful people face boredom and lack of motivation. The difference is they still show up.
That push through the boredom.
Mastery requires practice, and practice eventually becomes routine, sometimes mundane. The key is having the discipline to stick with it, even when the excitement fades.
And the Goldilocks rule helps here.
Yeah, the idea that we stay most motivated when we're working on tasks that are right at the edge of our current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, just challenging enough to stay engaged.
Keep it interesting.
And variable rewards can help too. That element of surprise, like in slot machines or social media feeds, can keep cravings high and fight boredom. Maybe vary your workout routine slightly or reward yourself unpredictably.
Okay. And what about looking back? Reflection.
Crucial for long-term improvement. Reflection and review make you aware of mistakes, potential improvements, and help you stay conscious of your progress.
Like top athletes reviewing their performance.
Exactly. Kipchoge, Ledecky.
Hmm.
They obsessively review data. Even just doing a personal annual review, as Claire suggests, can help you assess your habits and make conscious adjustments. Stay mindful of the process.
Okay, so bringing it all together, what's the real secret to lasting results? It's not just about ticking boxes, is it?
No, he argues that true satisfaction doesn't really come from achieving the goal itself. That feeling is often temporary. Happiness tends to be fleeting the moment between fulfilling one desire and forming the next.
So what's the driving force?
It's the process. It's the becoming. Pleasure comes from action, while desire initiates action. Feeling motivated gets you started. Feeling successful keeps you going.
Desire starts it, pleasure sustains it.
That's a great way to put it. Ultimately, habits are that compound interest of self-improvement. Small, consistent efforts guided by these laws really do add up to remarkable results over time.
So wrapping up our deep dive here, the big takeaway seems to be that building better habits is about gradual transformation. It's about understanding these 4 laws, make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying, and really aligning your habits with the kind of person you want to be.
Yeah, it's not about finding some magic bullet, but about applying these principles consistently. So maybe the challenge for everyone listening is, What's one small habit based on these ideas you could start today, right now?
Just one tiny thing. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying.
hmm Start casting those votes for your desired identity.
And maybe a final thought to leave people with. What kind of person do you ultimately want your habits to build?
A powerful question. And if folks want to go deeper, definitely check out James Clear's book and his website. Lots more there.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for diving deep with us today.